Hey YouTube, this is Rishika again. This video would be my 47th video tutorial on data stage. As you all know, I'm trying to make a series of data stage video tutorials on YouTube. And in the past videos, I pretty much completed the most important stages, I guess. I know I have been left with a few other stages in the processing category, but I'll deal with. Meanwhile, I have seen people asking me for the real-time task, so I thought I would like just basically make few videos on real-time tasks, like the pretty important ones and which I feel important. And I have seen people asking in the interviews, and they're it's like the daily or most often done activities on real-time project. For the past videos, I pretty much dealt with probably 4 videos, I guess. Yeah, so they all gonna be real-time task videos, and this gonna be the fourth real-time task video in that series. So let's get into this video. So this video, it will be about the sequential file stage, a specific property in the sequential file stage indeed. So that is called file pattern. I'll try to make clear I'll try to throw light on this file pattern. What do I say? File pattern, read method, file pattern property in the sequential file stage. Although I'm pretty sure I have mentioned about it in the sequential file stage, but I think I didn't go in detail, because that's the initial parts of my videos. So I don't want to scare the freshers or the beginners, so I didn't get into detail. So this is the most important or commonly done thing in real time, and it's also as done several interviews. I have seen people asking in interviews. So let's deal with this in detail with examples and all that stuff. File pattern, right? For pattern is something which we have like what do we say, like basically file names. There is a pattern for the file names, there is a naming convention for the file names, but only something like a letter or just a suffix is being added, or a suffix is being appended or something like that. So basically the naming convention will be same. Whenever let's say you have 10 files. So I'll give you an on the fly example. So let's say we have 10 files, and the 10 files have something names like sample 1, sample 2, sample 3 and sample 10, like all the 10 files. So now how do you read it? So you might say that let me change this to specific file. You can read 10 files or whatever the number of files by using this. You can have any number of this. This is a repeatable property, right? This file thing is a repeatable property, right? So you can just give here as source 1, and the next will be source 2, so on and so forth. But isn't this tiresome, right? So it's pretty tiresome, and it's not a good idea, because what if we we have something we don't know, like sample 1, sample 2, sample 3, we know that, right? But what if something changes, like tomorrow, what if sample 1 becomes a sample 11? So we can't manually change every time, because the job is already in production, and we can't change it every time based on the file names, right? So that's pretty tiresome. So that's the reason that's not a good idea too. It's not a good idea, more than tiresome. So that's the reason they gave us this file pattern option in the sequential file stage. So file pattern is something when you have like bulk of files with the same, or I don't say same, with similar naming convention. Similar is the apt word. So when we have like dump of files with a similar naming convention, and you want to read all those files from a single sequential file stage, then we use this file pattern. So that's the basic theory behind it. And whenever you let me show you a few things. So whenever you have a specific file, you have this first line column names, and keep file, missing file. So how many properties do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you change to file pattern, some of the properties will go off. So that's one thing you notice. The other thing you want to say is specific file. Okay, options, you have this filter thing. Okay, right? So filter is something, I mean, there are other options too. I don't really bother about it. Probably I'll try to explain the file name column in this video, but not all of them. But the one which are like I have noticed, or I have used, or I have seen people noticing, I mean talking about, are filter and the file name column. Okay, so file name column we'll be dealing later in this video. For now, filter. So when I have a specific file, I can use this filter option. But when I change this to a file pattern, there is no option called filter. So if you want to use filter, you can use that. See? Okay, so that's because I'll say it later. Okay, so just remember that. Okay, so that's the thing about this file pattern theoretically. Now let's get into scenarios. So you might be wondering now, okay, so we understand that the file pattern is important, but what might be the possible scenarios where we can use a file pattern, or what might be the possible scenarios where I can ask where I will be asked in interviews to use file pattern. So something in the interview question, something goes like, tell me the scenarios where you use the file pattern. Or let's say I have like 10 number of files or 5 files, and how do you read using one sequential file stage. So there are like n number of ways to put the same question, but basically the answer would be reading read method would be file pattern in the sequential file stage. Okay, so now let's get into this example. So I have made like a few scenarios which I have come across. I'm stressing this point, guys, because it's not like it's not like I'm choosing or I'm just dealing with few. I'm just trying to explain the what do I say, the core concept here. Okay, with few examples. Okay, it doesn't mean that these are the only scenarios where we use file pattern. Okay, so there might be multiple other scenarios, but I have chosen the scenarios, okay, for now, for this video sake. Okay, so all that being said, let's get into the scenario 1. So scenario 1, okay, I'll try to explain a background behind this scenario. So so the basic background info about this scenario is, let's say you are receiving files. Okay, someone or some source is placing files on your client server. Okay, and let's say for now, for this example's sake, let's say it's a daily file. Okay, and when they started, they gave us the naming convention. So basically daily file, right? So how do we know that it's sent on yesterday, it was sent on yesterday, it was sent today, or it will be sent tomorrow? How do we recognize that? Because of the date, right? So they usually, the vendor or the source usually appends the date and places that file, that particular file with the date appended, onto our client server. Okay, so so basically, so it's a daily thing. Okay, so they do the same thing except that the date changes. Okay, so everything remains same, like the sample underscore remains same, except that the date changes, right? So basic format or the naming convention for that particular source is something like this. Okay, so sample underscore is common for every file, and dot text is also common for every file. Okay, only this part changes, YYMMDD. Okay, so now how do you want to read this multiple files, because it's a daily file, right? You can't just change the file 17th and then next day you can't change it to 18th or 19th, all that things. It's stupid, right? So that's the reason they gave us this thing. So you use this wildcard, this asterisk or star in easier language. This is called a wildcard. Okay, so wildcard is something you specify when you have like n number of files and you want to read all of them, or that's one thing. But in this scenario, you might want to use this wildcard because you don't know what comes after that. Okay, so you don't know what comes later on. but it always starts with sample underscore and ends with dot text. Okay, so this is how you give your what do I say? This is how you give your path in the file pattern property. Okay, so this is how you give. Basically, these will be in parameters, obviously. So this will be in your file name parameter, and this will be in your director name parameter. So basically, you do this. Okay, so or because you know it's .txt, you're giving it .txt, right? But let's say you don't know .txt, they just send us files. Okay, so now it doesn't matter. Yeah, whenever you have like sample star, it reads all those files. Okay, so yeah, but the safest thing to do is this, I guess, if you're a little concerned about that specific source, and if some junk comes later on, like with junk extension or something, so that's when you might want to be safe, because it looks for the initial part, like the prefix and the suffix, and that's the safest thing to do. Okay, so this is the one scenario where you can use the sequential file pattern property. Okay, so that's first scenario, and the second scenario might be something like this. So let's say you have I have already dealt with that in previous scenario too, but let me just explain a bit. So let's say so in the previous scenario, you know that the extensions are .txt, right? Now let's say you have another vendor called B, and they are not sure what files they're gonna what type of files they're gonna send. Sometimes they're gonna send us txt file, and sometimes CSV comma delimited, and sometimes PGP files, and sometimes no extension. So they are not sure what their extension gonna be, although they're pretty sure what their file name's gonna be started with. Okay, so that's when you can use this. It doesn't happen, but yeah, I'm just saying another example for our sake. Okay, so that place we can use like sample star. Whenever it's a sample and wildcard, you give this thing, it picks all those files which start with sample, which start with the sample, what do I say, which start with sample name or sample prefix in this particular directory path. Okay, so that's the second scenario. And let's come to the third scenario. Third scenario is something like this. Okay, this is a little different scenario than usual. Probably this is not the common scenario, I guess, but I just want to let you guys know this might also be a possibility. Okay, so third scenario is something like this. So the source C, okay, source C is sending us some files. Okay, so on but they are not sure if it's a daily file. We know that it's going to be like one file per day, right? If it's a quarterly, like 3 times, I mean every 3 months we're going to receive one. Yeah, right? So now let's say this source doesn't have specific time period file, so and doesn't know, so they're just going to dump files onto our client server. Okay, and they're not sure how many they're going to dump, if it's 1 or 2 or 3, if it's like we don't know that. Okay, so for like day 1, let's say they have dumped 4 files, and day 2 just 2 files, and day 3 they're going to be like 3 files. Okay, so that's how the scenario is here. Let me minimize this. Okay, so day 1 they're going to be 4 files, and day 2 2 files, and day 3 3 files. So they dumped like that. Okay, so now so our part, or the client is concerned that even though they dump like n number of files, we just gonna read only the first 2 files for some crazy reason. Okay, this does not happen often, but yeah, I have experienced it. Okay, so it doesn't make sense. If they dump all the files, why do we need read only 2? But in some scenarios it makes sense. Okay, so now I'm not gonna go into the scenarios where it makes sense and where it does not make sense, because it depends on the project and the vendor client relationships and all that things. Okay, anyway, so even though they dump any number of files like 4, 2 or 3, our requirement is to read only the first two files. Okay, I'm stressing it, only the first two files. Okay, so that's where we can use this file pattern too. Okay, so you know the Unix command, right? ls minus, what did I say, first two files, right? So it's gonna be like, basically we need to sort it basically in the on the order of the time, and then read those first two files. Okay, so it's gonna be like I'm not sure if we can order it by time or just read whatever comes in the first two, or I'm not sure. Yeah, it depends on again the requirement. But the thing is, basically you use the Unix command here and give the directory path and the sample or something like this, and then your, basically it's a Unix command, right? Unix command, right? So basically you're trying to find out the first two files. Head minus 2 is ls gives the list of the files that start with sample and end with .txt file in this specific particular directory, and out of these files which start with sample and end with .txt, only the first two files will be read by the sequential file pattern property. Okay, so that's what it is. Okay, so these are the three types of scenarios I'm going to explain in this video. So yeah, and yeah, I did forget something here. So what did I say here? It reads sequentially, right? Like the file pattern in the order of the files, it just reads it, right? Not regularly, like if you don't give anything, just the file pattern and the naming thing, it just reads sequentially. Okay, but what you need to be careful when you're trying to choose the partitioning technique, because it depends on the downstream stages. Basically, if you want to use something like same or hash partition or something like that, it depends on the downstream process. Okay, so probably you want to use the round robin technique, round robin partition technique, if you want to what do I say, if you want to write the file sequentially or something like that. Okay, but yeah, I just want to mention that you want to choose your partitioning technique carefully here. Okay, most of the times it doesn't matter, because if it's direct dump or if it's just like the basic transformations, it doesn't matter. Okay, but if you're doing something later on with the stages, yeah, the partitioning technique matters too. Okay, so yeah, I want to say that thing, I didn't specify it, I'm sorry. So that being said, now let's move on to the example. So I have created a series of files here. I have created files here. So basically I have created the same files but with different dates. Okay, so this is the first scenario. So I have different dates. Okay, so then it's gonna be, let me copy this path. Okay, so and our file name is starting with file pattern. Okay, so file pattern, and this is a this will be a parameter. Okay, and then and then give our file name, right? So what is our file name starting with? File pattern, right? So you can just give asterisk, or if you want which is standard here. So what is the standard part here? Until test, it's standard, right? So yeah, you can just give this, or you can just give like test star. Okay, so whatever it is, it just reads all the files in this specific directory. Okay, and the other thing I want to mention about this file pattern is, first, file pattern, it's reading sequentially, right? It reads all those files. It brings up, basically all the files will be read, right? It's like a cat command. Okay, so it reads all the files and brings the data together out of the sequential file stage. Okay, so it really doesn't make sense if we have like file names in each what do I say, each file. Okay, so let's say you have 3 files, and if three files have the file names, yeah, it's gonna read as a different rows basically. Okay, so yeah, that's not good here. So you want to make sure, I'm not sure how we deal with this kind of thing, because I never encountered such things. I always had files which have no header fields there, or no first line in the column names. So it was just like always false in my case. Okay, so I'm not sure what if they get first line in what if they get column names for every file. I'm not sure about that. Okay, so yeah, if I encountered that thing, yeah, I'll try to make another video. But as of now, yeah, it's better to have first line, I mean there is no column names in my files. Okay, so that's the scenario I'm going to explain here, because that's the scenario which I have dealt with. Okay, I don't want to give you the wrong info. Okay, so now so we have, how many records do we have here? So let me see. So 3 records on one file. Okay, and 3 records on second file too, and 2 records. So 3, 3, 6 and 8. Okay, so now let me give you a format is delimiter is pipe. I have used the pipe delimiter, and quotes, it doesn't matter, but I don't have any quotes, so I'm going to change it to null. And columns, so because I don't have column names, I'm just give here. Okay, and owner. Okay, and this is integer and varchar and varchar. Okay, and I don't care about nullability or anything, so it's not that matter. Okay, and now let's try to view data. Okay, so how many rows do we see here? It should be 8, right? Because the file pattern is trying to read all the files together and putting into one bowl basically. Okay, so that this 8 rows will be processed as one file onto the next stages. Okay, so that's what it is happening. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and why do we have only 6? Let me check. Let me just why did I cancel? Okay, let me just try to open the sequential files. Sometimes, yeah, probably it didn't read, I guess. So let me just try to close and open it again. So I'm trying to refresh this too. Okay, so this folder too, I'm trying to refresh it. Okay, and now let's see what happens. I didn't change anything, guys. I really swear I didn't change anything. I just closed the sequential file stage and tried refreshing the folder. So now let's see if the records will be 8 or less than 8, or something crazy happens again. Okay, so it's 8 now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this is what it is. And if you see here, so 40 and 46 are from the third file, which is like 19th. Okay, and this is yes, so these are the today records, and these are these 23, 28 and 35 are yesterday's records, and 1, 11, 19 are like day before yesterday's records, which are dated 17th. Okay, so that's the order the sequential file has read it. Okay, so that's one thing. So yeah, the other thing is I just put the .txt extension, but yeah, it doesn't matter if I don't put the .txt extension too. It should read the same amount of records. It should read the same number of records basically. So with txt and without txt, it should read 8 records only in this case. Okay, so let's see that. So yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's good. And now let me that's first scenario, right? And now let me change this to different extensions. Okay, so now let me see this as PGP, and let me just give no extension to this. Okay, let me give, there is no extension for this. Okay, so the file name is same, but there is no extension for this. Okay, so if that is the case, then yeah, we just need to give this back. If we know the extension, we just give it this way, right? But if you're not sure that the extension going to be txt, if you're sure, we can just give that. But if you're not sure, we can just ignore this part. And now it should probably read the same count of records. So you got it here, right? So because a sequential file stage, the extension really doesn't matter unless it is something weird, because it just looks for the properties, the file format thing. Does it have a delimiter, or is it a fixed length thing, or does it have some other things like the basic sequential file things? Okay, so that's the second scenario. So now we are done with those two scenarios. Okay, and let's get into third scenario. And what is that? Okay, yeah, so third scenario is something if you want to read only the first two files, right? So now I have this. So I have this like 17, 18 and 19. Okay, so the first file is 17. First day for yesterday's, day before yesterday's an order, like something, okay, some crazy order. Okay, so now I want to read the file only from the first two files. Okay, so first two files. And now what we're gonna do is, here we're gonna put this something like this. So something like ls, you can just specify ls, I guess, ls. And if you are concerned about the most recent files and all that, yeah, you can just put ls minus rt or something like that, and this, and then pipe and head minus, and how many files we want to read? First two, right? And if you want to read first two, it's head minus 2, and if you want to read last two, you can just change the command to tail minus 2. Okay, so that's how it works. Okay, now for this example sake, let's see the first two things. Okay, so so I forgot something. So it's when you write this Unix command, it can't read this whole string. Okay, so what you're gonna do is, you put this in reverse quotes. This is what we do in Unix too, right? When you're trying to pass a variable of multiple, when you're trying to pass multiple commands together to a variable, you use these reverse quotes, right? So that's what we are doing here. So it's basically the same thing. Okay, so now out of the three files, we want to read only the first two files based on the time or something. RT, right? So it's the reverse order of the time, I guess. So you're just basically combining your Unix knowledge and the data stage thing, and trying to work out beautifully. Okay, so yeah, so ls minus rt is something which we probably oldest to newest. Okay, so yeah, oldest to newest. So 1, 11, 19 are from 17th file, 17th date. Okay, and 23, 28, 35 are from 18th date. Okay, so basically it just read from only the first two files. Okay, so that's what the third scenario is. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I did not design the whole transformation and then loading job, because this is how it goes down, right? View data, this is holding up the data, and then the same data is being passed on to the next stages based on the partitioning technique you choose. Okay, so that's one thing, based on the partitioning technique. Now I want to show one last thing here, and I said something about the file name field, right? So okay, so when I check the data for this thing, I said that the first three are from the 17 dated file, and last three are from 19 dated file. So let's say you don't believe me. Okay, and now let's say let's say ls minus rt, I'm just giving the same command and reverse quotes. Okay, and head minus 2 and reverse quotes. Okay, so yeah, now let's say you didn't believe me that I told you some stupid things. Okay, so that's not correct. Let's say you don't believe me. Now you want to know if I'm right. Okay, you want to know if the first three are from 17 dated file and last three are from 18 dated file. Okay, so that's when you want to choose the file name column. So what's a file name column? Usually it just adds another other column which basically has stores the file name, right? If you use the specific file and give the file name column, it gives the file name which read for that specific file, right? Which we got it, right? So just name your column. So I'm just naming as file name. Okay, so I'm just naming my column as file name, and I want to add it obviously to my field, right? Because I'm adding a new column. Okay, so yeah, so file name. Okay, file name. So let's make it varchar. Okay, so now I want to see the file name, right? So now let's see if file name comes or not, and let me see if I'm right or wrong. Okay, you didn't believe me, right? So now let me show you that if I'm right or not. So this is how our file name is, right? So this, but obviously if you see, this is not our file name, right? So then why did it show up? Because if you want, a sequential file pattern has something inbuilt thing which does not just show the file name. If it's a specific file, then it works, but if it's sequential file, it does not work. So whatever you give in the file pattern thing, that shows up. Okay, so how do you get the file name? You want to know how do you get the file name, right? So for that, you're gonna go to your job properties and go to parameters and add environment. There is an environmental variable, I don't remember exactly its name, but something like, let me check. So this one, apt import pattern uses file set. So treat sequential pattern as a file set. So what does it do is, this particular environmental variable, so yeah, we have a help text here, right? So when this variable is chosen, it basically turns all the concatenation or all the read part of the sequential file using the file pattern as a file set. So basically, so when it what do I say? So I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. So yeah, let me put something like this. So basically, this particular environmental variable, what does it do is, when the sequential file pattern mode reads the data from different files, it stores as a file set. That particular data which the sequential file read is stored as a file set. Okay, and that particular thing will change the behavior of the sequential file stage. Okay, so when it changes the behavior and stores as a file set, it stores with the file names. Okay, so this will basically you use the advantages of better parallelism, depending on the configuration and all that thing basically. Okay, so to be simple, this particular parameter creates the data as a file set and allows the files to be processed in parallel configuration or in parallel way. Okay, parallelism or something. Yeah, so basically, okay, so when you want to use the file names in the pattern, if you use specific file, yeah, you don't need to use this parameter, okay, or environmental variable. Okay, but if you want to have the file name columns in the sequential file mode when it's a file pattern, yeah, you need to add this thing. Okay, so and then set it to true, because we need to file set, right? We need to sequential pattern as file set, and now probably we're gonna get the file name. Okay, so here we go. Let me expand this. Okay, see, so now we got this, right? So So these 23, 28, 35 are from one specific file, which is like 18th. Okay, so I said 17th, so this is 18th. Okay, so whatever it is. Okay, so 18th. So obviously I'm wrong, I guess. But anyway, we just got the file name, right? So what's a file name? We just got it. Previously we didn't get it, but using this environmental variable, we got this, right? So this is how we get the file names when we choose the file pattern. Okay, if you don't add this environmental variable, yeah, there will be no file names. But however, if you use specific file, yeah, you need not choose this environmental variable, even though it populates a file name column. Okay, so yep, that's all guys, that's all with the sequential file stage and the file pattern. So I hope I tried my best to make sense with all the possible scenarios and which I have faced. Okay, so that's pretty much it guys on this video. File pattern, I think I don't think we have anything more left on file pattern unless it's a complex scenario, I guess. So for the basic learners it should be good. Okay, so that's all guys, that's all in this video, and I'll try to make another last task video, and then we'll jump on to the processing, left out the processing stages. Okay, I just want to leave a good number like 5 real-time tasks, and then jump onto the processing videos. Okay, so thank you guys, thank you so much for watching, and please do spread the word. My whole idea is to educate the learners or the freshers, or share my knowledge. I'm not trying to educate, but I'm trying to share my knowledge or what I know. Okay, thank you guys, thank you so much for watching.